Bringing data into PDF reports can suck. I used to crunch some numbers, copy and paste that into a Word report, and then print that as a PDF. That's super annoying, and let's face it, while doing this copy and paste dance, you will inevitably forget to update a number or break the formatting entirely. But here's what I've been preaching to clients, students, and colleagues. This copy and paste madness is not actually a necessary evil. You don't have to go through it just to get your sweet PDF. Nowadays you can just take your CSV and throw that into your PDF. Not as an attachment, but actually as data points inside of text, charts and tables. And that's exactly what Typst makes effortless for you. It is a fantastic tool to create beautiful PDFs. And what makes it so valuable to us as data scientists is the data integration. So in today's video, let me give you a quick intro into Typst and how you can use it to bring your data into your PDF reports. So you want to try out Typst, but you don't have the necessary tools on your computer yet. That's no problem at all. You can just head to typst.app and then sign in or sign up if you don't have an account yet. It's super free, and the moment you sign in, you can create a new empty document, give it some name, and then you have your way to go. Just put in content on the left, and on the right your PDF will appear. So that's what you can use to get started with Typst, just to try things out. What I'm actually using is Typst on my computer within Positron, just because I like this more. But as you can see, I have the exact same layout. On the left my code, and as I type stuff and save it, it will appear on the right. But look at the PDF output, it is tiny. We should insert the meme from the community series with Mr. Chang saying it's tiny. But my main point, rather than talking about memes here, is that I want to make this larger so that you can read it more clearly. And the way to do that is to change the document properties. So this brings us to our first thing we can learn about Typst, namely setting default settings. Settings. Well, I said it, we're going to do just that. So what we can do is to make some space at the top and then use the set function using the hashtag in front of it and then specifying 4 pages default properties, saying that as a paper I want to use A4. In case you don't know it, that's a German standard. And then you can specify margins for your document. Let's go with top, bottom, left and right margins, specifying each one individually. And then as I save this, you have or might have not seen that the text shifted a bit because the margins changed. Nothing too fancy yet, but what's more interesting is that we can do the same thing with the settings for the text. And there, let's define a different font that we want to use and a different text size. And now things became larger. Actually, that is not a nice font. Let's go for Source Sans Pro, which I have on my computer, so I'm going to use that. And I'm also going to create a 20-point font size just so that you can see things more clearly. Cool, so with that we have learned about how to use Typst in the Typst app and how to do settings for your document so that you can now fill this with beautiful content that you want to use. Let's start by fleshing out our document and the things I want to show you here by using headlines that you can create with equal signs and types. So what you're going to do is to throw an equal sign and say text formatting. It will create a headline for you with the text that you've specified. And then you do the exact same thing for different kind of things. And if you use more equal signs, it means that you have a different heading. So this is a subsection within this section here right now. So bold and italic is now a subsection within the text formatting section. And if you use more equal signs, you can even have subsections and so on. I think you get the idea. So within our bold and italic section, I can first show you that you can just throw in regular text. That's fascinating, I know, but you can make things bold and italic really easily. For bold, use an asterisk. For italic, use an underscore. And the moment you do that, what is between the asterisk and the underscores will become bold or italic. You can even make them bold and italic by using both of them. And if you want to have something underlined, there is sadly no cool shortcut for this. You will have to use the underline function using this hashtag in front of it and then sticking into brackets the text that you want to underline, and then you get just that underlined text. Nice. Let's go through more easy and quick wins that we can do with Typst, just so that you get a feeling for the formatting options that you have out of the box. For example, you can have lists using a minus sign. Just do apples, bananas, cherries. And then if you want to have indented lists, So this will give you a list. And now if you want to have an indented list, like a sub list, you will just go with indentations inside of your Typst code, and this will then do the indentation inside of the PDF for you. So that's pretty easy. And now if I were to search and replace the minuses with pluses, then we'd have a numbered list instead. Next, let us talk about aligning stuff. For alignment, you can use the align function. We have seen before that we can go into function mode using the hashtag, and there you use align, and then you can say how you want to align things, possibly left align, and then you throw into brackets the content that you want to have. I can't spell content, so this is why I'm throwing in gibberish to hide the fact that I misspelled content. And then if you repeat this for different kind of alignments like center or right, then you get more content aligned to the center or to the right. Now this is a kind of nice mechanism for alignment, but often you want to have something that lives on a grid. And for that there is the grid function. You use it using the hashtag once again, and then you specify things like the columns you want to use. In this case, the columns will be a 3-column layout, and each should get 1 fraction of the available space. For that, there is the FR unit, and if you use 1 fraction for each column, then you'll get exactly what you want, a 3-column layout. You can put in some space between them using gutter, and then you put in into curly brackets the things that you want to use as actual content for your 3 columns. So as I save this now, we do get our grid in here. And what's more, if I were to throw in more content, then you'd see that we just fill the next row. We will stick with the 3 columns alignment, and as I make one of the columns wider or smaller, you can see that in the shift of the grid. But here let's just give everyone equal width, and let's just use 1 row. Tables are a thing that we want to use all the time inside of data reports. I mean, that's kind of the nitty-gritty part where we just throw in a bunch of key statistics we've calculated, and we use that inside of our PDF report. And because tables are so important, you don't have to manually create them using the grid function. Instead, you can use the table function. You use the table function, once again, use the hashtag, and then just like with the grid, you can specify things like the columns. And in this scenario, we want to specify a 3-column table, but this time we want to make the 2 outer columns using auto width, saying just use the width of the content that is inside of this column. So let's go with auto, the remaining space, and auto. We can also specify things like inset. This will be similar to gutter. It will add spacing within table cells. And then you can specify the first row of the table header, using inside of brackets the content that you want to use, things like language, primary use, and year. And as I save this, you see that we are starting to create our table here. And you also see that these things became bold because I have used them in here. And now you can fill this table with more content by adding more rows, just like we have done with the grid container here. So what we do is we throw in things like a language, a primary use, and a year, and then we do the same thing with other data points that we have. And as I save this, we see that, hooray, there is our table. It isn't a particularly beautiful table. We can do way more advanced stuff with Typst, but just as a start to get you going, this is perfectly fine. So now that you know the very basics of Typst, really the stuff that is kind of boring actually, you know, how to make stuff bold, how to create a very basic table. Now that you know this stuff, we can move on to things that are more important to a data scientist, namely making things dependent on data. And the first thing we want to do in that endeavor is to use variables, kind of just like placeholders. What variables actually are. They are just placeholders. And we can use them very nicely inside of Typst. For example, I can create an author and a version variable to use as part of my document. And the way to do that is to use the let function using the hashtag once again, and then specifying the variable name, saying that this stuff is equal to, and here I'm just saying I'm John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, and the version of this document is version 1.0. Then we can use these variables in arbitrary contexts. We could use it inside of tables or grids, but the most straightforward or the easiest case is to just use it as inline text. For For example, I could write stuff like this document was prepared by, and then I want to put in the author in there. I can do this using the hashtag again, and I could even wrap this into asterisk to make things bold. And then you see that, okay, this document was indeed prepared by John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. It's really just fun to say John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. You should try it if you haven't. But my point here rather is that we can also use the other variable inside of our document. We can extend the text and say, and this stuff is currently at version, and there we put in the version placeholder from our variable in there again, and then our text will reflect that and say that we are at version 1.0. So that's pretty neat. We are starting to get into scripting territory where we can use variable and code inside of Typst. I hope you're getting more excited about Typst as we're doing this. It is not just boring, making things bold or like aligning things on a grid. It is actually also a lot of coding that is possible. For example, on the right here, I have a languages CSV file that I could include into my PDF document. Don't take the data here for granted. It's just something that I let Claude make up for me just to have a dummy data. But my point here is that we can use the CSV and load it into our Typst document. And this is what we can do using a new variable, or we rather want to save it into a variable. So we can do let raw data and then use the CSV function and say we want to load languages CSV. As I do this, we see that, okay, nothing has happened yet because we're not actually using this variable in here. But as I hover over my variable name inside of my IDE, I can see the things that were previously in my CSV. They are now inside of Typst arrays. And we can bring this into a table by using the table function again, you know, the one that we have just seen like 5 minutes ago. We can use this and say, okay, we need 4 columns this time. Remember, we have language, primary use, year, and popularity. That's the stuff we can use. And let's go with all but one column being auto columns. And then we want to stick the raw data in there. And the way to do that is to first understand how the data looks. So let's just print it to our PDF. Currently, this is how our data looks. Very similar to what we have seen here. Not very similar. It's actually one and the same thing. And you notice that this is actually nested in a larger list of things. You see the closing parentheses here. And what tables want to have is a flattened version of this. So what we can do is to call the flatten function on this thing. And now you see that this is a flat thing. And now we can stick this into our table function. We don't need the hashtag anymore because it's already here from the table. And then you see that, okay, Typst is complaining now because it expected content, but it found an array. This thing here is still an array, a list of things, and not actual content. But we can unpack this stuff inside of Typst using a little operator that we call with 2 dots. And then as we do this, hooray, there is our table all filled from the CSV that we have. But of course, this is a completely unstyled table, and we don't want to go into too many details here, but just let me say you can style this any way you want. And to prove it to you, I will make the first row into bold text. You see what we've done in our previous table, and this one we don't, but in our previous table, we used bold headers. But we can't do that here because the trick last time was to just wrap the things into asterisks. Now everything comes from the data. That's not something we want to change here. So instead we can say that within the first row of tables, use bold text. And for that, Typst has another mechanism to get the job done, namely show set rules. So what we can do is use a hashtag again and use a show rule. So we use the show and then we specify a rule. We want to target table cells where the y coordinates of that cell is 0, meaning the first row, we always start at 0. And then we want to set defaults for this particular thing. This is why I call it show set rule. We use the show keyword, give a rule, and then set attributes that we want to have. And here we want to set text to weight of bold. Now, as I do this, we see that nice. Our table header now became bold. Could also make the color into blue, for example. Actually, it's not color, it's fill. And then we'd have a blue label here. But I don't want to do that here. This was just to kind of show off that we can do a lot of cool styling inside of Typst. Nice. I hope you were able to see how useful Typst can be to create not only PDF reports, but also data-driven PDF reports by incorporating data directly into the Typst code itself. We have barely scratched the surface of what Typst can do, and if you want to learn more about Typst, I have a bunch of resources for you. For example, you could check out this video here that shows you how to automate this whole process of getting data, crunching numbers, and then generating a Typst report all in one with one script, whether you use R or Python. The video will show you both. And if you want to take a deep dive into this automation or into Typst, you can follow the link that should pop up right about now. I do have a course on creating data-driven PDF reports using Typst and your favorite data science language of choice. So if you want to learn more about this, you can check out this course. And finally, if you want to get this PDF and the code basically as a cheat sheet, you can follow the link in the description of this video to sign up to get that directly into your email inbox. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if you did. And now I say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.